Australia.
And I'm in St. John, Canada. So really excited to be here. I know we've got a little bit of time, but we're talking about convergence. And really, when we talk about convergence like XR, we're also talking about it converging with computer vision, AI, and IoT. And what we're seeing is just a plethora of composite solutions that are really impacting the way how work is being done. You know, the way we onboard people, how we provide support, both technical and sales, how healthcare is delivered. You know, how do we improve our communication skills? And we believe that the glue that ties all this together is learning. And in our case, it's going to be immersive learning. But before we get into that, I want to give an example of convergence with what we worked with very closely with McKinsey and our company a little while back. When you think of quick service restaurants, they've got, you know, expensive and complex equipment that's required in the preparation of food. You know, if you think of quick service restaurants, you can talk about Chick-fil-A, you can talk about McDonald's, Burger King, but sometimes that equipment breaks down. And I'll give you an example. What they call an automated beverage system, that, you know, that'd be able to put out Coke and Sprite and water. If it goes down, you're literally losing thousands of dollars per hour. Normally what happens is, you know, a technician is called, maybe 24 hours later, he arrives and has it up and running in no time. But imagine, you know, our hypothesis was, why can't we empower frontline staff who've never fixed this before? Could they do the same repair immediately, preserving thousands of dollars in sales revenue? So what I'm going to show you is an example where, you know, we incorporated augmented reality, object recognition, computer vision, IoT, and generative AI to provide a competent solution that allowed this frontline staff who've never ever repaired it to be able to complete this task. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to actually go through an example as I talk to it. So Adam, do you see my screen?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. So let me start. So what has happened is when the actual machine goes down, there is a code that is displayed. That code that is displayed is picked up. The frontline staff would use their iPad, point the iPad at the machine. We'd use object recognition to determine what type of ABS machine it is. Computer vision would take a look at the code, and then literally that would go back to our database where we've indexed all of the help to be able to repair it. Generative AI would then provide step-by-step instructions. And as a person performs that task, we'd use computer vision to make sure they press the right buttons. So let's just watch this for a little bit. So what's interesting, it's one thing for us to give a prescriptive step-by-step. It's another for the frontline staff to actually press the right buttons. So in this case, not only are we using, you know, we're feeding the information from, in our case, ChatGPT 4. It is sending the information to the iPad. The frontline user is following it step-by-step. But sometimes people make mistakes. We then take a look at it through computer vision, tell them if they've made a mistake, and they have to restart at a certain level step. They don't have to go through the whole thing, they have to repeat a specific step. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about immersive learning, how it affects us. So we've had 109 unskilled workers in this area. They were skilled doing the work, serving people and all that, which is it. But the first time fixing, in this case, a complex reset button over 16 steps that had to be completed, 78 were able to fix it. And if you think about that, if these machines go down, the average store machine goes down, say once a month, and you've got, your franchise owner, you get 20 of them, you're losing $3,000 a day. It can come into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in this case, what we've done is we've provided or extended that knowledge to a person who did not have that knowledge before to be able to complete that task. So when we talk about the effect of convergence, what we're really saying is, it's one thing to just use, AR, but when you start tying in IoT that's feeding back the air codes so our computer vision can pick it up, and then from that point, taking our generative AR to do prescriptive step-by-step and computer vision to make sure they do it correct, we're really starting to revolutionize how work can be done. And in this case, it has a profound effect. It has an effect on the company that's providing the technicians. It's got an effect on, the fact that they can take that money and invest it in other areas. So when we look at these things, we see that all of this convergence is going to revolutionize how things are going to get done. So getting back to this immersive learning, people like you want solutions that we know won't impact your business. But what we're seeing in our industry is there's a lot of huge barriers to face. So someone says, hey, I think I have a solution that can drive measurable impact on my business. Then they're saying, I just don't know, what technologies do I use for XR? What's the right hardware? What's the right software? How do I fit it together? What happens about procurement? How am I going to get over that? How do I get it deployed? What are the logistics? Jesus, what happens if I go through all this and the pilot doesn't work? What am I going to do with all of these extra, headsets that I have that I can no longer use? So that's where the immersive learning as a service comes into play that we want to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to hand it off to my partner, Adam, and he's going to give you some really valuable insight on what we mean by that. So Adam, I'll put it into presentation mode and I'll hand it off to you.
Cool, thanks. And Rodrigo, if you still can't see the screen, let us know. I think everyone else can see the screen. So yeah, we'll make sure, I think this is recorded and it will be made available later on. But hello, everyone. Yeah, so we are, and it's a nice segue from the way Doug had positioned the convergence. And if you think about all the complexities of, he was throwing out all those three-letter acronyms of IoT, XR, AR, VR, everything coming together. It becomes complex. It becomes hard for companies to start on the journey. And then, in fact, if they even want to start, then there's so many other pieces which they have to line up to make sure that they have everything aligned to just embark on delivering some benefit to the company. And that's where immersive learning as a service comes into play, where what we're saying is, make it our problem. This is what we do. This is what our company does. So we have the learning background, but we also have the managed services superpower. And when we combine the two, we can give you this service on a subscription-based approach, whereby you just pay for whatever you take from us as part of that package. So I won't spend time talking a lot about this, but we all have seen these numbers, and the numbers speak to itself. The importance of XR and the importance of immersive tech. We've seen, we've heard a lot about 275% people coming out 275% more confident to apply that knowledge. 3.75% emotionally connected to the content which they have learned in an environment, in an immersive environment, and 4% more focused than the way we learn today in the traditional way.
Yeah, so Adam, why don't you talk about that emotionally connected? About you just got back from Barcelona and explain your experience with where we were showing logistics for one of our companies.
Exactly. Yeah. So we did a QSR in Barcelona, in Madrid. Actually, I was there last week, and we did a session there, or we had a booth for their employees to come and experience, and it is just an internal. And the way they described was internal boring routine of which tool to use when to do a certain exercise. So what we had done, we actually had built an immersive environment where employees can get into, and they had these buttons which they could press with their hands. So no controllers or nothing, just press buttons, and then it will take them through a journey of, okay, this is the problem, which system you go to, which form to fill, and which workflow to trigger to get the result which you want. And I've been doing this for a while, but one of the things which was very surprising to me, it was a 13-minute session, and we were bringing employees into this experience. And almost 80% of those employees, at the end of that 13 minutes, when we went to them to ask them to give the headset back to us, they were asking us to give them a few more minutes so that they could complete the exercise. And I haven't seen anyone like that much interested in completing a boring routine exercise before. So and that's what immersive does. Like when you are into it, you are pressing the button and you are testing and you're 100% focused, and then you're testing your knowledge in real time. You actually do get very engaged, and this is what those employees were doing at that time. So yeah, you are getting emotionally attached to not only the content but the information which we want to deliver. So yeah, we all know the greatness of it, right? But then the question is, like, where do we get started? And then companies get stuck with okay, we don't have the expertise, or maybe we do have expertise, but we start off with a project which is just a side project of our innovation team, which is looking at 13, 14 other things across the organization. But even if you cross that part, there's the whole big question about logistic, which device to buy, where to buy from, how to maintain them, how to manage it, how to deploy software, all those things, those questions becomes apparent very quickly. And then the final challenge which you hit is scalability. So you can go to an extent with your internal resources, but then you hit the challenge around how to scale it across the organization. And if you go on next slide, Doug, this is the heart of what immersive learning as a service is. So what we have done, we have packaged together all the disciplines which is required for you to get started with your journey and then start delivering the benefit to your employees immediately. So none of those problems is your problem. All of those becomes our problem. And what you get is a learning-based tool which you start using immediately for your employees. And the pillars are strategy, fulfillment, solution and integration, logistic and device management, onboarding and training, monitoring, reporting, and support. I'll go through them. I'm also conscious of time. I might actually skip a couple of those, go through them at highest level. But the names themselves, they suggest what they are. But what we have done, we actually have built frameworks and methodologies that backs up those disciplines to bring that service to you. If you go next slide, Doug. And it just reiterates the point about why immersive learning as a service is important and goes back to some of those things. But one of the biggest thing here is this predictability, right? So companies are embarking on this journey without knowing if the hardware which they may procure today is going to be the hardware which they want in few months' time. So you actually want to be in a position where you could predict that, okay, I'm going to spend X many dollars per month, and I will get the state of art, the best hardware for me to do my job. So things like that, it's taken care of as part of this package. If you go on next slide, at the highest level, the strategy piece is all about what learning outcome you want to achieve. So again, our company is born on learning. Learning is what we do day in, day out. So the question we ask is what learning outcome you want to achieve. And then we work backwards from there, looking at the characteristics of XR technology. So be it haptic, ambient sound, like any of those things, if it can deliver the outcome which you want, we will build it as part of the package. But then it's not just doing a solution for the sake of it. Building a solution so that it delivers a learning outcome for you. And we have some very strong guiding principle around helping you to build that strategy. If you go to the next slide. So then it comes to fulfillment. So now we have this strategy. We're thinking about, okay, how the application will work. But then the biggest question is then about devices. And there's a great piece of work, Doug, feel free to jump in here, but a great piece of work we have done with another large organization whereby we are actually supplying, housing the hardware for them, not only the devices which are being used, but also devices which are spare devices as and when needed, getting deployed.
Yeah, so Adam, what's really interesting is one of the things is, demand capacity. Can you organize it so that you can ensure you get the maximum efficient use of, say, your headsets that you're going to be using. So, can you get it to 1 to 10? And that means instead of having a device for each person, especially on the training, it can be 1 device for 10. And logistically, how can you get them? How can you get those devices in time for that section of training that's going to be required? All of these things, if done correctly, especially up front, will drive your overall cost down. And that's really the key, because it's amazing how many companies can be effective, addressing XR, and especially with the headsets, that they can do it very, very effectively, as long as they do some demand capacity planning and logistics. And that's where, in the case that we've been able to work with a lot of our large companies to be able to make sure that they get the most efficiencies.
Yeah. And then on next slide, it's then boils down to, okay, let's build a solution. And then it's all powered by our Teamwork AR, which is our platform. And the platform actually provides you the enterprise level integration to your systems around single sign-on, learning management system, and the reporting in terms of, again, it's a learning-based reporting, and not that like how many hours you've spent on the hardware. It's more about what you have learned and what sort of learning outcome we have achieved by doing the training, and then it's all backed up with the security platform which we have. Around logistics and device management, the idea here is that we take care of everything, all the way from device management to your shipping, your boxing or reboxing, storage, warehousing, and then proactivity recovery and loss management. So again, if you talk about QSRs or frontline workforce where hardware will go missing, so how we have a system in place whereby hardware can quickly be replaced in real time. And then it all comes back to then in terms of getting your employees onboarded and trained on the platform. So we have built a package which allows you to, as part of the immersive learning as a service, allows you to onboard your employees, provide the training. For the first-time users, we have some one-on-one real-time training, and then we have virtual on-demand training for people who will be onboarded at a later stage.
So Adam, maybe you might want to jump into that launch pad, because I think it's really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, cool. And then there are a couple of other things there, but yeah. So then if you think immersive learning as a service is something designed very much for companies and organizations who know what they want out of XR. We will come and build a strategy around learning, but you know where to start from. But then we're also finding that there are a lot of companies out there who don't even know where to start from. They're very green in this area. So to do that, what we have done, we are wrapping the immersive learning as a service with a framework called XR Launchpad. And Launchpad is what is it's for like 101 of XR. So education, training, and then allowing companies to, once they understand what XR can do, then build your strategy to go immersive learning as a service. If you go on next slide, so it's a 0 to 5 week initial engagement or initial exercise, whereby mostly focused on inspiring and educating your workforce, understanding what will be some of those use cases, and very quickly finding one. If you go on next slide, very quickly finding one of those use cases, which you can do a POC, build something to test in your environment, and test it with the hardware or with devices which we supply. And then once we have that, do the analysis to build your learning application, whichever way you want, and then start deploying that. And in the next slide, this is where the two comes together. So the immersive learning as a service comes into play once you know what exactly you want to achieve. And then we will build that whole solution with the immersive learning as a service platform, hardware, services, everything will be included. And then at the end of it comes the support and monitoring. So on the next slide, and this is packaged together. So we provide all the support and monitoring throughout the usage, the current usage, and also later on. Anything you want to add, Doug?
No, I think the key is that we're seeing right now is there's the two camps. We're getting a lot of numbers of people know they want a solution, they want to solve. They just want to make sure they're suggesting the right technology. But especially with a lot of generative AI, how can they include that into their solution, especially if they're looking at soft skills training, so that they can get true interactivity for their staff at scale, so it can be quite cost effective. And then on the other side, we've got people who are saying they're hearing all this, but they don't need the steps, what steps they need to go to. And we think in both cases, immersive learning as a service is a really good step to go to. So I think we're coming up to our time. I'd like to thank everybody for their time. And if you have any questions, as we have this deck that's available for people who would be interested in it.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you very much.